Hello and welcome back to another video. Please remember to subscribe, like, and do note I have a merch store, so check that out in the description. So let's get started. So, you want to know how an iron farm works. Well, an iron farm works off the basic principle that if a villager is terrified by a zombie or other undead creature or pillager, those work as well, then it will spawn a golem to defend itself. So what I mean by terrified is zombie, he has clear line of sight to the villager, so if you break this fence, it just starts running. That's terrified. Now, the detection radius for a villager to get terrified by the zombie is about 5 blocks laterally. It's a little bit unclear what it is diagonally, but it's for sure 3 blocks away. So, if I were to, let's say, place a villager right here, he's totally fine until he enters the radius. If I place him over here, he gets immediately scared and bolts. Now, over here is the iron golem spawning radius. Now, it may look a bit funky, and that's because the dimensions are actually not kind of symmetrical. You see, in the negative direction, this way, it is 7 blocks, but in the positive direction, it's 8. Same goes for the other axis, 7 in the negative direction, and 8 in the positive. Now, this extends from the base of the villager's feet all the way up 6 blocks and all the way down 6 blocks, and it manifests in the form of a giant cube, so that would be around the entire thing. Now, the conditions for spawning a golem is that the villager has slept in the last 20 minutes, which also happens to be one Minecraft day. They can be only 10 blocks away from another villager who has spawned the golem in the last 3 minutes. And if they're in that radius, they can't until that cooldown is over. Now, blocks that the golem can spawn on have to be full blocks. So, things like fences, the bottom half of slabs, trapdoors, or walls are a no-go. Whereas stone, deep slate copper if you want, wool or terracotta are all fair game because they're full blocks. 2 important blocks that golems can't spawn on are carpets and path blocks. Path blocks are just shy of 1 full block, and this comes in especially useful when you're building your golem farms on the ground and you need to spawn proof it. Now, interestingly enough, golems can actually spawn in water as long as the block beneath it is spawnable. And the final criteria in order to spawn an iron golem is that there must be 3 or more villagers together, and they have to do a little something called gossiping or panicking. In this case, you'd be using the zombie to panic them. So, I'm going to show you 2 different designs for a farm. So, do that. Now, this is a pretty standard design for an iron golem farm. You've got the chambers on diagonals, and the purpose of this is to maximize the spawning room. As you can see, the spawns aren't intersecting much, only in those corners, and even then they're only intersecting by 2, and these corners are completely to themselves. But this design has one flaw, and that's you're not actually utilizing the full spawning radius. So if there's a golem in, let's say, this quadrant spawned by this little unit over here, this one can't actually spawn again until that golem has exited. So, a little bit of a problem. And the other thing is that this hole is enormous, and in fact this little visualizers I did for the spawning radius are actually stopping the golem from falling in. And still, this is kind of huge. It's completely impractical. So you'd probably have a bit of a smaller spawning area, maybe about there perhaps, and you'd also have the villagers a little further apart. Now, this usually wouldn't be possible, seeing as, well, the zombie has a limited detection radius, but the illagers, specifically the pillager, has a 15 block detection radius. So it's absolutely enormous, and you can put the villagers all the way back to about there. Now, I'm going to quickly run down the components of the farm. First of all, you've got the zombie. It doesn't have to be in the center, but it's best if you want to utilize it to its fullest potential. You can scare all four at once, though, you know, if you're lazy. Damn, creeper explosion. Anyway, if you really wanted to, you could just put the zombie like right over here in front of him and have 4 different zombies. That's completely fine. The reason why he's bobbing up and down is in order to periodically scare the villagers, seeing as they kind of have trouble sleeping when they're scared, and it makes the design a little more efficient. Now, this right here is the spawning chamber for the villagers, where they just live. Now, there's actually a few too many of them in here. I'm not sure how that happened, but the design is simple. You got beds, string on top, and then carpet on top of that. This is just to make sure the villagers can't get on the bed, and the string is simply to put the carpet a little higher. I just found that string works better, and it's used in almost every design. It's supposed to just put the carpet on the beds. Now, the golems are pushed with water streams into the center, and you want to remove them as quickly as possible, because the final and most important criteria is that a golem can't actually spawn if there's a golem too close to it. So you'd have to move that about 20 blocks away, and then you'd be alright. In this case, you'd want to drop it down. Down here, you'd conventionally have a kill chamber, where you have some lava and some hoppers to collect the iron, which I can show off in another design right now. Now, this was my little take on it. I decided that I could probably get away with moving the villagers further back by utilizing the zombie's horizontal detection radius instead, and it still does lead to overlap, but there actually is a small band right here where they can spawn their golems fully, so it is technically a little less inefficient. So in my experience, the golems actually spawn really quickly for some reason, so on paper this seems like it'd be worse, but to me it's actually working pretty fast. Similar premise with the zombie bobbing up and down, except in this case I just use glass to look at him. The beds are arranged a little bit differently to save on some space, and most importantly, we got the kill chamber down there. Essentially, it's just a bunch of lava sitting on top of signs. Right below that is hoppers, and the golems are 3 blocks tall, so they actually just get burnt right up there. And the hoppers all link up to a chest. Now out here just feeds into a double chest, because why not? And as you can see, we already collected about a stack and 2 of iron. So it's working decent. Just, you know, I feel like I could do better than this. In which case, I implore you to check out my next video on my survival series, building an iron farm, in where, you guessed it, I built an iron farm. And I do highly implore you to check that out, since in that video I intend to utilize the full potential of all the room villagers have to spawn a golem, and hopefully I can actually make a more efficient design than what's commonly used. And I'm going to show me off building it, so check that out. Please remember to like, subscribe. I do have a merch store down in the comments, so you can check that out, just as a reminder, and see you next video.